large square wrapped in brown paper. She carefully picked the tape away from one end of the package to disclose a framed circle of 12 segments, each segment a different color, done in squares and rectangles of different stitches. Like a proper color wheel, the colors ranged from cool purple and blue to hot red and orange. It was the stretching, matting, and framing Mrs. Wells was here to pay for today. She had selected an antique gold frame that was a perfect choice. "Wow," said Mrs. Wells, reaching for her checkbook. "You did a great job," agreed Betsy, and so did Heidi. Heidi was Betsy's finisher. "Where's Godwin this morning?" asked Mrs. Wells a few minutes later as she stood at the door looking around, the retaped needlepoint piece under one arm. "He's a bit late this morning," said Betsy. "I expect him any minute." She tried to keep the concern out of her voice. Godwin was rarely more than a few minutes late, and then he always called to say what had happened and when he'd be in. But today the shop had been open an hour with no sign or signal. Mrs. Wells left, and Betsy went back to the track lighting. "Betsy!" Again she was startled by the voice of someone in her shop without the warning bing. But it was Godwin's voice, and it sounded distraught. "Goddy?" Betsy hurried out to the front of her shop to find her store manager leaning on the library table that stood in the middle of the floor. He was unshaven and wearing the same clothes he'd had on yesterday, now badly rumpled, and Godwin was a very fastidious dresser. "What on earth's the matter?" she said. "It's John. He's thrown me out." John was Godwin's lover. "Again?" Betsy regretted the query the instant it came out of her mouth. Godwin was a good man, but very sensitive. Still, John had thrown Godwin out on several other occasions, and they had always made up after a few days or a week. "It's different this time. This time he really means it," said Godwin in a low voice. It was always different this time, but this time Betsy held her tongue. He fell into a chair and rested his forehead in his hands. "He wouldn't take 2 minutes to explain what the problem was. He wouldn't even let me take a change of clothes, just tossed me out on my ear. I drove around for a while. Then I went back home and thought I'd park in front with the top down so he'd look out the window and feel sorry for me. But he didn't, so I slept the whole night in my car." That explained his appearance. "At least he didn't throw your clothes out into the street this time," Betsy pointed out. "Yes," agreed Godwin, "but you know something? The time he did that, he was mad for a reason. I don't know why he's mad this time. He's been getting crankier and crankier all week. Nothing I do suits him. And last night was the final straw. He yelled at me for doing the dishes. I am serious, for doing the dishes. He hates coming into the kitchen in the morning and seeing dishes in the sink, but last night he didn't want me to do them. That was the last thing in a string of things he didn't like. He didn't like the shirt I wore to work yesterday. He didn't like the music I put on for dinner, and it was one of our favorite albums. And then he stomped in to shout about the dishes. It's like he was looking for a fight, so I thought fine, and gave him one. And he ordered me to leave. 'Out,' he said, just like that. And I don't know why. I just don't know why." "Poor fellow," said Betsy, and meant it. She came to put a hand on his shoulder. "What am I going to do?" he cried, grabbing her hand and wetting it with his tears. Betsy thought about it. "First of all," she said, "you are going upstairs to wash your hands and face, then borrow a razor and clean yourself up. Then you are going out to buy a change of clothes. You know you always think more clearly when you look good. And besides, our customers expect it of you. Possibly by the time you get back down here, John will have come to his senses and phoned looking for you. It will be a good lesson to him if you aren't waiting for that call." Godwin stopped sniveling to think about that. "I think you may be right," he said. "Of course I'm right." Heartened, Godwin stood and hugged her. "You are the best friend I've ever had. Where do you keep your razor?"